Hello, it's noon on a Thursday. In just a bit, I'll be speaking to Dr. PREMITHA, DAMODARAN, consultant, obstetrician, and gynecologist to talk about managing life post-menopause. But just before that, crisis management analyst Nordin Abdullah, he speaks to me about Malaysia's SMEs, GDP growth, and new technology to overcome labor issues. That all happening in the next 30 minutes. I'm Jessy Chahal. You're watching The Brief. Thanks for being with me. Let's begin with the news in brief right now. The Dewan Rakyat meeting today is expected to see the winding up of the debate and a vote in the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3, 2022 on provisions preventing members of Parliament from switching parties. Now, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department of Parliament and Law, Dr. Wan Junaidi Tunku Jaafar, is expected to wind up that debate on the bill at 2:30 p.m. today. Now, the bill needs two-thirds of the majority of that support to be approved in the Dewan Rakyat. While all that is happening, in the meantime, the government and the opposition have agreed that there is no need for a new written agreement between them to replace the MOU on transformation and political stability that was signed back in September 2021. However, the Prime Minister says, despite being unwritten, the understanding meant to ensure the well-being of the people and political stability in the country could still be continued. Now, the MOU will expire when the parliament is dissolved and only mentioned that the next general election shall not be held anytime before July 31st, and the date was not the expiry date of the MOU itself. The Prime Minister has also stressed that the dissolution of Parliament does not depend on anything and that it will be dissolved when the time comes. Well, still with the Prime Minister, Keluarga Malaysia Coalition of NGOs and Yayasan Generasi Malaysia have been urged to mobilize their members to be the government's eyes and ears to ensure the well-being of all Malaysians. The Prime Minister has stressed the benefits of cooperation with regards to resources and effort that will bring about prosperity and peace and, in turn, help to boost the Malaysian Happiness Index. Well, here's some great news for all our graduates. The government says they will now reintroduce the PT/PTN loan repayment exemption to graduates who earn first class, a bachelor's degree, beginning from the year 2019. Now, this privilege would be given to deserving graduates regardless of economic status, race, and religion. PT/PTN will discuss with the Ministry of Finance regarding this matter in terms of its allocations involved. This is as an encouragement to the children of Keluarga Malaysia to work hard and to obtain the best grades in their studies. And TNB assures that electricity supply in the country is reliable and stable because supply disruptions can be restored quickly. Its president and CEO of TNB says the assurance was proven when power in several areas in Peninsular Malaysia yesterday was quickly restored by TNB's technical team following a wide blackout. Well, apart from that, he's also said that the national grid itself has smart features that facilitates the work of tracing and restoring supply. Well, it's time now to wheel in Nordin Abdullah. As usual, he joins me to walk us through what's happening locally and globally. Nordin, good to be connected again. Let's take a quick look at today's topics, and let's start with this. The Science, Technology and Innovation Minister has said that the use of new technology will be able to help overcome labor issues in agro-commodity industry while increasing productivity, which will also, of course, help to save time and also reduce costs. He said the search or development of products using latest technology is also important. How are you reading into this, and how do you see farmers and smallholders interacting with agencies and then using or applying this technology to get the support that they need?
Well, I think there's a tripartite approach to this problem right now, Jessy. We do have a labor shortage. We also have a certain amount of unemployment in Malaysia. At the same time, we need to shift to a high technology agriculture. And for that to happen, we need to then invest into the technology that the minister is talking about. once we are able to identify and invest correctly into these technologies, we have to then train these young people, because predominantly in the agricultural sector is either very old people above the age of 50 or foreign workers. So now we'll be able to use, and you can see some of this like cool drone technology, and I've seen some very interesting stuff lately, even being able to cut down fresh fruit bunches in palm oil estates. Then you'll be able to attract these young graduates to be part of this agro-technology revolution. Then they also have to be paid better. So the key is getting to this equation where productivity is there, the investment, there will be a return on the investment, and then we're able to employ these young graduates who have been skilled up with this new technology, not just the degrees and TVET training that they have. They need to be skilled in that technology that then can be a clear and concise replacement for cheap foreign labor. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but we're in the right direction. We're asking the right questions, and we're heading in the right direction. And that is higher wages, more technology, more investment, and looking at getting this food security equation right.
Absolutely. As we look towards finding better solutions and moving and working towards a more integrated future, we'll definitely need to also look at new technology, and with that, bringing in better wages, better pay, training the young, and of course the adoption of this technology as well. From that, Nordin, let's look at what the Department of Statistics Malaysia is saying. They say Malaysia's SMEs GDP last year increased 0.1%, slower than Malaysia's GDP, which grew at 3.1%. But we also know that SMEs are the biggest contributors to our GDP. Now, generally, the growth of SMEs GDP will exceed Malaysia's GDP, but since 2020, of course, pandemic, the SMEs GDP has recorded slower growth than Malaysia's GDP. Help us wrap our head around this, and what does this mean for the next 6 months?
Well, what I see here is actually the kind of fallout from the unavailable foreign labor. And of course, you're going to have a lot less output, especially from SMEs who make over 90%, 97 odd percent of the companies that operate in Malaysia. And then if you look at, especially in the manufacturing sector, a lot of them rely on cheap foreign labor. So naturally, there's going to be a dip in their output that will equate to a dip in contribution to GDP. So the crisis now is, and it goes back to that original story, is how do we get SMEs now to invest in the future? How do we get them to invest in the technology? And how do we get them to invest into the human capital that's going to be required to now drive the productivity that will then drive the output numbers, that will then drive the GDP numbers that we need to achieve our goals? So it's going to be all about this equation.
Very quickly, though, we're looking at the SMEs and the entire sector. How do we help them sort of wheel them out of getting out of debt? And what are some of the obstacles that can be removed in the next, or the last quarter of this year, so that they can then get back that momentum which has been lost over the past 2 years, Nordin?
Exactly. I mean, some of the stuff I'm talking about seems like, how to get to the moon after you spent 2 years surviving COVID-19. So now it's about looking at which SMEs and which sectors should be prioritized. And that should be the areas that the government then subsidizes and then looks at subsidizing the human capital, especially training and upskilling, ensuring that the technology is available to them. And I think the cost of doing business needs to be continually reduced for SMEs, especially in the cost of compliance. So if there's can be any assistance given there, of course, access to loans is always going to be a first thing that a lot of SMEs and their trade associations always talk about. So there's a kind of set of go-to plays in the playbook, but at the same time, I think we've got to get our strategy right. Understand that we've got to be in critical supply chains, and we've got to be resilient, and we've got to look at the global requirements, ensuring that we're following global standards. At the same time, look at domestic markets, and is there enough to be absorbed here in the domestic market to warrant such an investment? So plenty of work to do. The government is moving in that direction, and it's an exciting time as we start to look at the future of Malaysia.
That's right. Exciting indeed. We'll need to have our finger on many of these different sort of sectors and ensure that these pulses are all beating as much as they can so that we can itch closer towards bouncing back better as they say. Of course, we are in a recovery phase and the effects of the pandemic are being felt by sectors, but they are of course going through that recovery period as well. Nordin, we'll check in with you again. Thank you for weighing in. Well, from that, I take you into a quick business in brief update now. According to an analyst, the ringgit has strengthened against the US dollar at the opening today as the United States Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell was seen to be less hawkish in his comments following the announcement of the 75 basis points rate hike that was announced yesterday. Today, one US dollar is 4 ringgit 44 cent. Well, onto the stock market. Bursa Malaysia has maintained its uptrend this morning, taking its cue from Wall Street's rally overnight as investors welcome another interest rate hike by the US Federal Reserve. On Wednesday, the central bank raised its key interest rate by the expected 75 basis points, lifting that rate to the highest level it's been since the year 2018. And briefly, if you own the market for gold today is 240 ringgit 88 cent per gram. That's up 1 ringgit 88 cent from yesterday. A huge bounce from what we've been noticing all week. Now, in other news, short-term rates are expected to remain stable today on Bank Negara Malaysia's operations to absorb surplus liquidity from the financial system. Liquidity is estimated at 42.27 billion ringgit in the conventional system and 38.20 billion ringgit in Islamic funds. And internationally, Samsung Electronics reported a 12% rise in April to June for profits today as robust data center demand for high-margin memory chips underpinned prices. The world's top maker of memory chips and smartphones said operating profit rose to 14.1 trillion won. That's about $10.8 billion for the quarter ended June 30th. From 12.57 trillion won just the year before. Now, this was slightly higher than the company's own estimated of 14 trillion won that was put out a forecast earlier this month. Well, on the brief, as usual, every day we have a feature segment, and today we talk about post-menopause care. Malaysia is now one of the pioneers in the management of menopause guidelines in Southeast Asia with the launch of the Clinical Practice Guidelines, or CPG, of the management of menopause in Malaysia. Now, according to our Health Minister, Khairy Jamaluddin, a woman's health during her post-menopausal years carries an enormous weight towards the health and economic productivity of our nation as a whole. The average lifespan of a Malaysian woman that was found in 2022 is about 78.3 years compared to 73.2 years of a Malaysian man. Women, we live longer. Well, today I'm joined by Dr. PREMITHA Damodaran, Chair of the CPG Committee, to discuss a little bit more on this. Doctor, welcome to the brief. It's great having you on. Tell us a little bit more about menopause and how it affects women physically and mentally to get the ball rolling, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Jessy. Thank you for inviting me here today. Many people actually look at menopause in a negative light. And I think one of the main reasons for bringing this CPG up is the fact that menopause is a time a woman should embrace and not think negatively of herself. Now, unfortunately, for a woman, that estrogen hormone that is so vital to her stops functioning, and the ovary stops functioning at around 50, which is the average age of menopause in this country. So when the ovaries shut down, she does not then produce that hormone estrogen. And when that stops, then she is then subject to this whole set of changes in her body that actually can carry a lot of long-term morbidity. And if, say, a woman is now going to live till 78, that means that half of Malaysian women are going to live beyond 78. So we are going to look at 80 and 90 and even 100. So she is then going to have all that years of her life without that hormone estrogen actually protecting her. And that's really important. So around the time of menopause, there are lots of jokes about menopause. Oh, you're going to get hot and you're going to get sweaty and you can't sleep and you're going to get irritable. Well, those are the changes that, one can happen around the time of menopause, which everyone, they either take it as a joke or they worry about it. But what we are looking at is long-term health, because we know that as time goes along, simple things like the cholesterol levels change and the bad cholesterol goes up. And then that, a woman's heart, when you compare to a man's heart, and I'm not talking about, generally, but a woman's heart, the vessels are actually smaller. So when she gets a block, she has a more serious heart attack. And the chances of a woman dying from a heart attack is actually much higher than of a man. Because when she goes in with, say, and her pains may not be so typical of that of a man. So a lot of times it is actually misdiagnosed. So that's really important. Number two is the fact that, her bones, you're looking at bone health. And we know that when we hit menopause, our bones, we're all losing bones. And the rate of bone loss increases with menopause. And that's really important for us to know. Now, if we look at world figures of osteoporosis, which means that there is, a woman is more, men and women are more subject to fractures and fall when they fall. When we look at the worldwide figures of osteoporosis, we find that it is going to be predominant in Asia. And that's scary because of the fact that when a woman then loses bone, she can just, a simple cough can actually cause a fracture at her backbone. A simple fall, like just bending down to pick up her pen and then she falls, she can actually have a fracture of her wrist. Or the worst is actually a fracture of the hip bone, because we know that when men and women fracture their hip bones, what happens is a 20-25% of them actually die within that first year. And a lot of them actually live with crutches, impaired mobility, having to depend on someone to look after them. And that's not what we want. Yes, we are growing older, but we need to grow healthy, grow older healthy and not be dependent on too many people. And that's really very important. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I've
I was
spoken
just
about
about to say, with all these changes and what you're highlighting, it seems that still a lot left for education and awareness
correct.
by the masses, and for us all to collectively, as a society, understand the importance of menopause management in Malaysia, and of course, particularly women folk themselves. So, how do you see this affecting society on the whole, and how do you best see we can get these messages out to families and to different segments of society, so that there's better understanding around these massive changes that happen to a woman?
So I think this CPG is actually the start, because I think we need to educate the healthcare workers. And I'm not talking about healthcare workers in the urban areas. I'm really, the urban areas, everyone is well versed, they know what to do. But I'm looking at, the villages out there in the kampongs, or in the little clinic kesehatans that you can have in Sabah, Sarawak. And I'm hoping to get this CPG out there, because then anyone would be able to look at the CPG and then pick up, okay, so, a woman is subject to ABC. These are the tests that we need to do. And if she has this problem, have a referral system to the district hospital or to the main hospitals in that area. And so that that woman has a chance of, getting healthier or knowing what's there for her future. And, this two-way communication, I think that's really important. as an offshoot to this CPG, we're actually bringing out patient information pamphlets in the next couple of months. And we're looking at patient information pamphlets in various languages. And so, this patient information pamphlets to reach, again, as many folks out there as possible, just to improve knowledge, just to get them to talk about menopause. And, know that, there is help. We need to look after you. You need to go for certain tests. It doesn't mean medication. It's just more of the fact that, come in, let's have a chat, do some blood tests. Let's get an ultrasound done or get your breast checked, get your pap smear done. And if you are going through a bad menopause patch, we can help you with medication. And just to get that rolling, I think it's really very important.
It's a good start, especially
Yeah, it's
for
a good
now.
start. Yeah.
Right. Doctor, you talked about embracing these changes as well, but many women who experience or go through this phase of their life feel that perhaps there's nothing left to contribute to society, or they feel that, oh, I'm tired now. It's the sort of winter of my years, so to say. Can they still be productive in society? And what should spouses and partners and family members, community, children understand about this?
A woman is best around menopause time because she's got all that experience behind her. And I'm talking personally too, come on. There's so much more that you can do. You can contribute to society. And a lot of women don't, a woman actually regards herself as last in the family. They are actually the center and the essence of how that family is. She looks after her husband, she looks after her children. If she's not married, it's the parents. She's also working, making sure that everything works around her. And when we talk to her about, have you had a checkup done? It's always the last. And, we need to change that because we need to get her to come in. And these are women who then, at 50, say around 50, they have so much more to contribute because they have gone through life. They, at work, they should probably at the peak of their work, and they should then change focus and try and do other things that would make them feel happy and still contribute. There is so much more that one can do. And, it doesn't have to be in the office, but there is so much more that a woman past 50 can do. And
it doesn't have to be the beginning of the end. It can be a beginning
no,
to
it's
new
the
phase
beginning
of
of the
life.
beginning.
The
Yeah.
beginning of the beginning. Dr. Premitha, thank you so much for weighing in
Thank
and
you
shedding
so much.
light on this very important issue. We hope to speak to you again. That was Dr. Premitha, Chair of the CPG Committee. Well, moving on now to international news. Let's begin with this. According to WHO, there have been more than 18,000 cases of monkeypox reported globally from 78 countries, with the majority in Europe. 98% of cases outside the countries in Africa where the virus is endemic have been reported in men who have sexual intercourse with men, and around 10% of patients have been hospitalized in the current outbreak, and 5 have died. All of them have occurred in Africa. Well, still on monkeypox, people have been lining up for the monkeypox vaccine at a new dedicated vaccine center in Paris, which was booked out in the first 2 days since its opening. More than 1,800 people in France have caught the virus, with most of the infections in the Paris region, representing around 10% of total infections globally. And in the recent weeks, more than 100 vaccine centers have been opened across the country. More than 6,000 people have received a dose of the vaccine. Moving on to South Korea, its foreign minister says North Korea is likely to face stronger sanctions, including measures aimed at curbing its cyber attack capabilities if it conducts a nuclear test that it has been preparing for. US and South Korea have said North Korea has mobilized thousands of hackers to steal funds, including cryptocurrencies, to finance its weapons. North Korea's foreign ministry denies this accusation. And in Spain, its prime minister says the country has the capacity to become a gas hub for Europe to help support regional efforts to curb dependence on Russian gas. Sanchez says Spain would do what it could to prevent Europe from becoming an energy hostage of the Russian president. Well, this week, energy ministers agreed in Brussels that all EU countries should voluntarily reduce gas by 15% in a bid to save up supplies for winter. And here's a quick update on the earthquake that took place or happened in the Philippines yesterday. The earthquake that struck the northern Philippine island of Luzon yesterday killed 5 people, damaged buildings, and sent strong tremors throughout the capital, Manila. Officials said at least 64 people were injured and 173 buildings damaged, many within the Abra province, just 11 kilometers from the epicenter of the quake. Over 200 aftershocks have been recorded in the area, and 58 landslides were also reported. And in soccer, complainant DIS said in a statement yesterday that Neymar, Barcelona, and Santos will stand trial on October 17th on fraud and corruption charges over the transfer of the Brazilian forward to Barcelona from Santos back in 2013. Neymar's parents and the family company NNN have also been charged in this case, along with former Santos managers and Josep Maria, the then president and vice president of Barcelona. The case stems from a complaint by Brazilian investment group DIS, which owned part of Neymar's transfer rights. It also alleges that it received less money than it was entitled to when he joined Barcelona. Well, with that, we take you to what's trending across the country. Hashtag blackout is trending. This has happened since yesterday. You should go onto Twitter and read all the hilarious tweets by the public. Some of the tweets read, and I'll do this for you. Somebody probably plugged their phone in for fast charging at a TNB plant. That's right, in reference to the blackout that happened yesterday. Here's another one that someone tweeted. Don't worry, everyone. It's just a trial run for GE15 vote counting night. Haha. Also, another one. Thor is angry because his movie is yet to be released in Malaysia, so he attacked the power lines in Klang Valley today, causing power outage. However, jokes aside, it's time to think about preparation for black swan events of this nature. Perhaps something as simple as being ready, having a standby fully charged power bank, maybe a couple more, so that you'll be able to stay in communication longer. Well, that's all the time we have for now. I'm getting the signal that it's time to go. Next up is the news update bulletin Bernama at 1 p.m. Do stay tuned for that. I'm Jessy Chahal. This has been Thursday's edition of The Brief. Thanks for being with me.